Welcome to our meeting. In our session today, we're going to cover the True Bible Study Book of Healing. And let's look at some records in section 1 of this book, where Jesus healed blind people. In this record, we will look at John chapter 9, verses 1 to 7. On the left-hand side, you will see the True Bible Study translation, and on the right-hand side is the King James Version. In John chapter 9, verse 1, it says, "And passing by, he saw a blind man, or a man blind from birth. And his learning disciples asked him, saying, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, in order that he may be born blind?" Jesus answered, "Neither this person sinned, nor his parents, but in order that the works of God may be manifested in him, it is necessary for us to work the works of the one having sent me, until it is day. Night comes when not one person is able to work. Whenever I may be in the world, I am the light of the world." Having said these things, he spat on the ground, and he made clay from the spittle, and he anointed the clay on his eyes, on the man's eyes. And Jesus said to him, "You must go. You must wash yourself into the pool of Siloam," which is interpreted, "having been apostled." Therefore he went away, the man went away, and he washed himself, and came observing. So let's read the True Bible Study explanation of these verses. During the time that Jesus was going along on his way out from the temple, he saw a man who could not physically see with his eyes, since he became born from his mother's womb. He had never seen with his eyes. Jesus' learning disciples asked Jesus, saying, "Rabbi," or teacher, "who sinned? Who missed the mark of what God says? Who performed aberration from God's word, God's will, God's law, God's precepts? This person, the blind man himself after his birth, which God might have known about, like he knew about Jesus and had told Abraham regarding Jesus, as recorded in John chapter 8, or his parents, his father and mother, perhaps by committing adultery or fornication." So the learning disciples, or students, asked Jesus, saying, "Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, for the purpose and result that he would be born blind, in the state of not being able to see with his eyes?" Jesus answered, "Neither this person sinned, nor his parents." So there's the answer. This person, the blind man, did not sin, and his parents did not sin. Jesus continues, "But contrary to trying to find out who sinned as a cause, reason, or purpose for this man's blindness, for the purpose and result that the works of God, God's works, the deeds pertaining to and proceeding from him, the end products issuing from God, they should be done for the purpose and result that the works of God would be manifest, caused to be evidence brought to light, shown forth in him within this man's sphere of action. What should we do? It is necessary for us, it is binding for us to focus our attention. We are obligated to work, to expend our energy, produce effects by our actions of being and work, be effective carrying out the works of the one, God, who sent me. Until, how long can they carry out the works of God? Continuing for as long a time as or while it is day. Currently it is daytime, and figuratively Jesus is referring to the light shining at the present time, enabling us to work from God's viewpoint. Why? Because night comes when not one person is able to work. Nighttime is coming, and that's figuratively referring to the lack of light. At the point that night arrives, then nobody has the ability, none is capable of working the works of God. At whatever time that I, Jesus, would be present in the world, I am the light of the world. I exist being absolute light, the light that God is making available to or for mankind, human beings, who inhabit the ordered arrangement that God created. And of course, light is the opposite of the darkness of nighttime. So Jesus told them to focus their attention on carrying out or doing the works of God while it is still day. After Jesus said these things to his learning disciples in the presence of the blind man, now the blind man was not deaf, and so he heard the conversation, Jesus proceeded to work the works of God in this situation. What did he do? He spat or ejected saliva from his mouth onto the ground. And he made clay from the spittle. He produced clay, as a potter uses clay to make vessels. And he anointed the clay on his eyes. He rubbed it down onto the man's eyes. He touched the surface of his eyelids, slightly grazing or rubbing his eyes over with the clay that he made, and he said to him, that is to the blind man, the man who is blind, "You must go. It is imperative that you actively lead yourself under, in the sense of going without any argument, under cover, as animals go because they are under a yoke, without going from side to side or intentionally stopping to do something else. You must go. You must wash yourself. Wash the part of your body which needs to be washed, specifically your eyes where I put the clay." Where would he go? Into the pool of Siloam, directed to the pool of water for swimming or bathing called Siloam, which is transliterated from the Hebrew word, the pool located south of the temple. It's interpreted, having been apostled and continuing apostled. It is interesting that this Hebrew word is explained in Greek by the verb that means having been apostled or already sent, or still sent forth on a specific mission or assignment. Now, following on logically, the man went away from where he was to the pool of Siloam, and he washed his eyes, and he came back to where Jesus was located, observing. The man was now looking at things, mentally envisioning and contemplating what he could see with his eyes. This man was born blind. He had no light enabling sight in his eyes, but after he accepted what Jesus made available to him, physical light was entering into his physical eyes, and now he could see with them. Now, what is the sequence of events in this instance? Well, we read that the man was seen by Jesus, or Jesus saw the man who was blind from birth. Jesus said that the works of God should be done. Jesus spat to the ground, and he made clay from the spittle, and he anointed the clay on the blind man's eyes, and he told him what to do. And the blind man went away, and he washed himself, and he came observing. So who believes, who prays or speaks, who heals, who gets healed? We saw that Jesus believed God's words to him. Jesus made clay from spittle and anointed the man's eyes. He carried out the works of or from God. Jesus spoke words of healing to the blind man. He told him what to do. And the blind man did what Jesus told him, and he was healed. And let's note that Jesus worked the works of God in this situation. The blind man did what Jesus told him to do. Now let's carry on and read another interesting record in the book of Matthew regarding the healing of 2 other blind men. In Matthew chapter 20, we'll begin in verse 29. And during their journeying out from Jericho, a big crowd followed Jesus. And look, 2 blind men sitting down beside the way, having heard that Jesus passes by. They shouted, saying, "You must be merciful towards us, Lord, Son of David." But the crowd censured them in order that they may be silent. But the blind men shouted greater, saying, "You must be merciful towards us, Lord, Son of David." And having stood, Jesus sounded to them and said, "What do you intend I may do for you?" They said to him, "Lord, in order that our eyes may be opened." And having compassion, Jesus touched their eyes, and immediately they observed upwardly and followed him. Let's read some details regarding these verses. So while they were making their journey from Jericho on their way to Jerusalem, a big throng of people followed Jesus. 2 blind men who were sitting down alongside the road heard that Jesus was passing by, and they cried out to Jesus to be merciful towards them. They addressed Jesus as Lord, Son of David, thereby letting Jesus know that they believed that he was the Master relative to themselves, and that he was the Son, the offspring descendant of King David, who was promised by God. Jesus was the legal heir to the throne of King David, and God had given Jesus the authority and ability to show mercy on God's behalf. However, the other people censored, reprimanded, or rebuked these blind men for the purpose and result that they would be quiet, stop speaking. But the blind men shouted to a greater degree, saying, "You must be merciful towards us, Lord, Son of David." Then Jesus stood still and summoned them to him. He asked them what they intended or willed that he would do for them, to be specific about it. Jesus did not guess, but instead he asked them, and so he gave them the opportunity to explain. They told Jesus that they wanted him, what they wanted from him, and again indicated that they believed he had the power and authority, being the Son of David, to do this. After they told him, Jesus had compassion. He was caused to have inner affections, tender feelings, emotions, or attitudes about them. And what did Jesus do? He touched their eyes, and straightway they looked up in the recovery of their physical sight, and they followed Jesus. Now, in this record, what is the sequence of events? Well, we read that 2 blind men shouted to Jesus for mercy. Now, other people told them to be quiet. The blind men shouted to Jesus for mercy again, and Jesus asked them what they wanted specifically. The blind men told Jesus what they wanted, and Jesus had compassion. And what did he do in this instance? Jesus touched their eyes, and they were healed, and they followed Jesus. So who believes, who prays or speaks, who heals, who gets healed? In this record, Jesus believed God's words to him, and he did not speak words of healing to the 2 blind men, but instead he touched their eyes. And Jesus healed these men. Both men were healed. Note, Jesus asked the two blind men to be specific about what they wanted him to do for them.